Jake Morrison kicked at the fallen leaves as he walked through the woods behind his house. The 15-year-old boy had nothing better to do on this boring Saturday afternoon. His friends were all busy with family stuff, and his mom had told him to go outside instead of playing video games all day. The October air was cool and crisp. Jake pulled his jacket tighter around himself as he wandered deeper into the forest. He had explored these woods many times before, but today he decided to go further than usual. His curiosity always got the better of him. After walking for about 20 minutes, Jake noticed something strange. Behind a thick group of pine trees, he could see what looked like concrete. He pushed through the branches and found himself staring at a large concrete wall covered in vines and moss. "What the heck is this?" Jake said out loud to himself. He walked around the structure and found that it was much bigger than he first thought. The concrete building was mostly underground, with only the top part showing above the dirt. Old metal pipes stuck out from the walls, and there were several small windows that were painted black from the inside. Jake found a heavy metal door that was slightly open. Rust covered the hinges, and weeds grew around the bottom of the door. Someone had painted the number 7 on the door in faded yellow paint. Below that, Jake could make out some words that were too faded to read clearly. He pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The door creaked loudly as he pushed it open wider. The sound echoed in the empty hallway beyond. Jake hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside. The air smelled old and dusty. His phone light showed a long hallway with several doors on both sides. Water had leaked through the ceiling in some places, leaving dark stains on the walls. Jake's footsteps echoed as he walked slowly down the hall. The first few rooms were empty except for some old office furniture and broken glass, but the fourth room on the right was different. This room was filled with strange equipment that Jake had never seen before. Metal boxes with blinking lights sat on long tables. Thick cables ran along the walls and disappeared into holes in the ceiling. In the center of the room sat a large console that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Jake walked over to the console and examined it closely. The main screen was dark, but he could see that it was much more advanced than any computer he had ever used. Strange symbols were etched into the metal around the screen. The keyboard had normal letters and numbers, but it also had keys with symbols that looked almost like hieroglyphics. "This is so cool," Jake whispered. He noticed that some of the equipment still had power indicators glowing softly. A low humming sound came from somewhere in the room. Jake realized that whatever this place was, it still had electricity running. Jake spent the next hour exploring the rest of the building. He found what looked like living quarters, a kitchen, and even a small library filled with books about physics and engineering. Most of the books were too advanced for him to understand, but he could tell this place had been some kind of research facility. In one of the offices, Jake found a calendar on the wall that showed the year 1995. That was 28 years ago, long before Jake was even born. He also found some papers that mentioned something called Project Timebridge, but most of the documents were too damaged by water to read. Jake returned to the room with the console. He was fascinated by the advanced technology. His father worked as a computer programmer, and Jake had always been good with electronics. He wondered if he could figure out how to turn the console on. He traced the power cables from the console to a large metal box in the corner. The box had several switches and indicators. Jake carefully flipped one of the switches, and the box began to hum louder. More lights came on around the room. "Yes," Jake said excitedly. He went back to the console and pressed what looked like a power button. The screen flickered to life, showing a blue glow that filled the room. Strange symbols appeared on the screen, moving and changing in patterns that seemed almost alive. Jake stared at the screen in amazement. He had never seen anything like it. The symbols seemed to respond to his presence, moving faster when he got closer to the screen. When he touched one of the strange keys on the keyboard, the symbols changed completely. After playing with the console for a while, Jake discovered that he could make the symbols change into normal English letters. The console seemed to be learning from him somehow. Soon, he had figured out how to type normal messages on the screen. Jake decided to try sending a message, even though he had no idea where it would go. He typed, "Is anyone out there?" He pressed what looked like a send button, and his message disappeared from the screen. Jake waited for a few minutes, but nothing happened. He was about to give up when new text appeared on the screen. "Jake, this is going to sound impossible, but you need to listen carefully. This is you, 30 years in the future." Jake stared at the screen in shock. Someone was playing a joke on him. That had to be it, but who could know his name? And how could they send a message to this old console? He typed back, "Yeah, right. Who is this really?" The response came quickly. "I know you think this is a joke. You're 15 years old, you live at 428 Pine Street. Your bedroom is on the second floor, and you have a poster of the solar system on your wall. You have a scar on your left knee from when you fell off your bike when you were 7 years old." Jake felt cold suddenly. All of that was true. But lots of people knew where he lived, and anyone who had seen him in shorts could see his scar. Still, something about the message felt real. He typed, "If you're really me, tell me something only I would know. You're afraid of thunderstorms because when you were 5, lightning struck the tree in your backyard during a big storm. You were watching from your bedroom window, and the flash was so bright it scared you. You never told anyone about that fear because you thought it was silly." Jake's hands shook as he read the message. He had never told anyone about his fear of storms. Not his parents, not his friends, not anyone. How could this stranger know about it? "How is this possible?" Jake typed. "The console you're using is a temporal communication device. It can send messages backward through time, but only to the same quantum signature. That means I can only talk to myself at different ages. I've been waiting for you to find this place." Jake read the message 3 times. Time travel was impossible. Everyone knew that. But this console was definitely more advanced than anything he had ever seen. And whoever was sending these messages knew things about him that no one else could. "No, prove it," Jake typed. "Tell me something that will happen tomorrow." "Tomorrow is Sunday. Your mother will make pancakes for breakfast, but she burned the first batch. Your father will complain about the smell, and your mom will throw a dish towel at him. They'll both laugh about it." Jake made a mental note to pay attention to breakfast. Tomorrow, if this prediction came true, then maybe, just maybe, he really was talking to his future self. "If you're really me from the future," Jake typed, "then why are you contacting me now?" The response that came back changed everything, because in 3 years, alien ships will appear in Earth's skies and humanity will be at war. I need your help to make sure we're ready." Jake stared at the screen, his heart pounding. This was either the most elaborate prank in history, or he had just discovered something that would change the world forever. Jake stared at the screen for a long time. Alien ships, war, it sounded like something from a movie, not real life. But the person on the other end of this strange console knew things about him that no one else could know. "You're joking," Jake typed. "Aliens aren't real." "I wish I was joking," came the reply. 3 years from now, on March 15th, massive ships will appear over every major city on Earth. They belong to something called the Hegemony. It's a group of alien species that has been conquering worlds for thousands of years. Jake's hands trembled. As he typed his response, "How do you know all this?" "Because I lived through it. I'm 30 years older than you are right now. I'm a commander in the Earth Defense Corps, and we've been fighting this war for the past 3 years. It's been the hardest thing humanity has ever faced." The screen flickered and new text appeared. "The aliens call themselves the Hegemony. They have technology that's hundreds of years ahead of ours. Their ships are massive, some of them the size of small cities. They have weapons that can destroy entire buildings with a single shot." Jake felt sick to his stomach. "Are we losing?" "We're barely holding on, but that's why I'm talking to you now. In my timeline, we weren't ready. The aliens caught us completely by surprise. Most of Earth's military was destroyed in the first few hours of the attack. We've been fighting a desperate battle ever since." Jake read the message twice. "But if you're me from the future and you're still alive, then we must be winning somehow." "We're surviving, but just barely." The aliens expected us to surrender quickly like all the other species they've conquered. But humans don't give up. We keep fighting even when the odds are impossible. That's what's kept us alive this long. The console hummed quietly as Jake thought about what he was reading. Why are they attacking us? The hegemony has a simple rule. Any species that develops space travel becomes a threat to them. They've been watching Earth for the past 50 years, waiting for us to advance enough to be dangerous. Once we started building space stations and sending probes to other planets, they decided we needed to be stopped. Jake typed quickly. What do they want? They want to add us to their empire. The hegemony is made up of dozens of different alien species. Some joined willingly, others were forced to join after losing wars. They use each species for different purposes. Some are good at building things, others are good at fighting, and others are good at thinking. What would they use humans for? Manual labor mostly. They see us as a primitive species that's good at following orders. They have no idea how wrong they are about us. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. So they want to make us slaves? Essentially, yes, but here's what they don't understand about humans. We're not like the other species they've conquered. We don't follow patterns, we don't give up, and we're incredibly good at adapting to new situations. The screen flickered again, and a longer message appeared. The aliens have conquered hundreds of worlds using the same basic strategy. They show up with overwhelming force, destroy the planet's defenses, and demand surrender. Most species give up quickly when they realize they can't win, but humans are different. Jake leaned closer to the screen. How are we different? We're stubborn, we're creative, and we learn incredibly fast. The aliens have been fighting the same way for thousands of years because their old methods always worked. But humans don't fight like other species. We change our tactics constantly. We use weapons in ways they've never seen before. We turn their own technology against them. But you said they're more advanced than us. They are, but that's actually one of their weaknesses. They rely too much on their technology. They've become predictable. Humans, on the other hand, are completely unpredictable. We use whatever we can find. We improvise, we take risks that other species would never consider. Jake thought about this for a moment. So we're winning because we're crazy? In a way, yes. The aliens expect logical, predictable behavior. But humans aren't always logical. We do things that don't make sense to them. We sacrifice ourselves to save others. We keep fighting even when we're badly outnumbered. We refuse to accept defeat even when it seems impossible to win. The console beeped and new text appeared. Let me tell you about the Battle of Chicago. It happened 6 months ago. The aliens had surrounded the city with their ships. They demanded that everyone surrender. The military commander in charge was supposed to give up to save civilian lives. Jake waited for the rest of the story. Instead, he ordered every available aircraft to attack the alien ships. Passenger jets, cargo planes, even helicopters. Most of them were destroyed, but they managed to damage several alien ships. The aliens were so surprised by this tactic that they retreated. They had never seen a species use civilian aircraft as weapons before. That's incredible, Jake typed. That's just one example. We've been surprising them constantly. They don't understand why we won't give up. In their experience, inferior species always surrender when faced with superior force. But humans see impossible odds as a challenge, not a reason to quit. Jake felt a strange sense of pride reading these messages. So we're actually winning? We're not losing, which is more than any other species has managed, but we're still heavily outnumbered. The aliens have resources from hundreds of worlds. We only have Earth. That's why I need your help. What can I do? I'm just a kid. You're not just a kid. You're me, 30 years ago. And you have something I didn't have when I was your age. You have advance warning. You know what's coming. Jake stared at the screen, but no one will believe me. You don't need to tell them about the aliens directly. You just need to help humanity prepare. The aliens are advanced, but they're not invincible. There are things we can do to get ready. Like what? Better materials, stronger metals, more efficient energy sources, faster computers, better weapons. All of these things exist in my time because we developed them during the war. But if we can develop them earlier, we'll be much better prepared when the aliens arrive. Jake felt overwhelmed. How am I supposed to do all that? You don't have to do it alone. You just need to point humanity in the right direction. Share ideas, inspire innovations. Get people thinking about problems they haven't considered yet. But I'm just a teenager. No one listens to teenagers. You'd be surprised. Some of the greatest discoveries in history were made by young people, and you have an advantage. You know what works because I've already seen it work? The console hummed louder for a moment, then quieted down. I need to go soon. The aliens monitor our communications, and I can't risk them detecting the signal, but I'll contact you again tomorrow at the same time. Jake typed quickly. Wait, how do I know this is real? How do I know you're not just someone playing a prank? Check. Tomorrow's breakfast. Remember what I told you about the pancakes? And Jake, start paying attention to the news. Look for stories about new technologies, space exploration, and military developments. The signs are already there if you know what to look for. What signs? The aliens have been watching us for decades. They've been influencing our development, trying to keep us from advancing too quickly. But they've also been making mistakes. There have been UFO sightings, strange materials found at crash sites, and technologies that seem too advanced for their time. Jake felt his heart racing. You mean UFOs are real? Some of them, most are fake or misidentified, but some are real. The aliens have been conducting surveillance missions for years. They wanted to make sure we weren't developing faster than they expected, but why haven't they attacked already? Because they wanted to wait until we were advanced enough to be useful to them, but not so advanced that we'd be difficult to defeat? They miscalculated. They thought they had more time. But humans have been developing faster than they expected. The screen flickered again. I have to go now. But remember, Jake, this isn't about fighting aliens. This is about showing the universe what humans are capable of. We're not just another species to be conquered. We're something new, something they've never seen before. What do you mean? We're a species that refuses to be defeated. And that's going to change everything. The screen went dark. Jake sat in the silent room, his mind racing with everything he had learned. Tomorrow, he would find out if his future self was telling the truth about the pancakes. And if he was, then Jake had exactly 3 years to help prepare humanity for the biggest challenge in its history. Jake woke up early on Sunday morning. He had barely slept all night, thinking about the strange conversation with his future self. Part of him hoped it was all just a weird dream, but he knew it was real. The console in the abandoned building was unlike anything he had ever seen. He went downstairs to the kitchen, where his mother was already making breakfast. Jake watched carefully as she poured pancake batter into the pan. The first batch started to smoke, and she quickly flipped them over. Oh no, his mother said. I burned them again. Jake's father walked into the kitchen and sniffed the air. What's that smell? Did you burn something? His mother grabbed a dish towel and threw it at his father. Very funny, smart guy. Both of his parents laughed, and Jake felt his stomach drop. Everything his future self had predicted was happening exactly as he had said. The aliens were real. The war was coming. And somehow, Jake was the key to helping humanity survive. After breakfast, Jake rode his bike back to the abandoned facility. The console was still working, and he quickly typed a message to his future self. The pancakes happened exactly like you said. What do I do now? The response came quickly. Good, now you believe me. We have a lot of work to do and not much time. To do it, where do I start? First, you need to understand something important. You can't tell anyone about the aliens directly. No one will believe you, and even if they did, it would cause panic. Instead, you need to guide humanity toward the right discoveries. Jake typed back. How do I do that? You need to become known as a genius. Start small. Show your teachers and classmates that you understand advanced concepts. Get people's attention with your knowledge. But I'm not a genius, I'm just a regular kid. You have something better than natural genius. You have knowledge from the future. I'm going to teach you things that won't be discovered for years. You'll share these ideas, and people will think you're incredibly smart. Over the next few hours, Jake's future self began teaching him advanced mathematical concepts and scientific principles. Some of it was very difficult to understand, but Jake was a quick learner. His future self was patient and explained things in simple terms. The aliens have weaknesses, his future self explained. Their ships are strong, but they use a specific type of energy shield. If we can develop the right kind of weapon, we can break through their defenses. Jake learned about quantum physics, advanced metallurgy, and energy manipulation. His future self taught him about materials that were stronger than steel, but lighter than aluminum. He learned about energy sources that could power entire cities, using just a small amount of fuel. The most important thing, his future self said, is to get people thinking about these problems now. In my timeline, we didn't start working on these technologies until after the aliens arrived. That was too late. We need to start now. Jake spent the rest of the day taking notes and asking questions. When he finally went home, his head was spinning with new information. He had learned more in one day than he usually learned in a month. At school. The next morning, Jake went to his chemistry class with a plan. Mrs. Patterson was explaining basic chemical reactions when Jake raised his hand. Mrs. Patterson, what if we could create a material that was stronger than steel but weighed almost nothing? What kind of chemical bonds would we need for that? Mrs. Patterson looked surprised. That's a very advanced question, Jake. Are you reading ahead in the textbook? I've been thinking about it, Jake said. I read that if we could manipulate the molecular structure of carbon, we might be able to create something like super strong fibers. Mrs. Patterson's eyes lit up. That's actually a real area of research. There are scientists working on something called carbon nanotubes. How did you know about that? Jake shrugged. I read a lot of science articles online. After class, Mrs. Patterson asked Jake to stay behind. Where did you really learn about carbon nanotubes? That's graduate-level chemistry. Jake had prepared for this question. I've been reading research papers online. There's so much interesting stuff being developed right now. Did you know that some scientists think we might be able to create materials that are hundreds of times stronger than anything we have now? Mrs. Patterson sat down at her desk. Show me what you've been reading. Jake pulled out his notebook and showed her the equations and diagrams his future self had taught him. Mrs. Patterson's eyes grew wide as she looked at the complex formulas. Jake, this is incredible. Some of these calculations are beyond anything I've seen before. Are you sure you understood all this? I think so. It's about manipulating the atomic structure to create new properties, right? Mrs. Patterson nodded. Slowly, I have a friend who works at the university. She's a materials scientist. Would you like to meet her? Really? That would be amazing. That weekend, Mrs. Patterson took Jake to meet Dr. Amanda Clark at the local university. Dr. Clark was impressed by Jake's knowledge and asked him dozens of questions about his theories. This is remarkable, Dr. Clark said. You're describing concepts that are on the cutting edge of materials science. How old are you? 15, Jake said. 15? And you understand quantum mechanics well enough to design new materials? Jake nodded. I think these materials could be used for all kinds of things. Stronger buildings, better cars, maybe even spacecraft. Dr. Clark looked at Mrs. Patterson. We need to get this boy into our advanced program. He has the potential to make real contributions to science. Over the next few weeks, Jake continued to amaze his teachers and the university professors with his knowledge. He shared ideas about energy storage, communication systems, and manufacturing techniques. Each idea was based on what his future self had taught him. Jake also began working on his friends. He convinced his best friend Pete Rodriguez to join him in martial arts classes. Why do you want to learn karate? Pete asked. Physical fitness is important, Jake said. And you never know when you might need to defend yourself. Jake also got his neighbor Lisa Chun interested in engineering. He showed her some of his designs and explained how they could be used to build better machines. "You're really smart, Jake," Lisa said. "I never thought about engineering before, but this stuff is actually pretty cool." Jake started a club at school called the Future Technology Club. He presented his ideas to other students and got them excited about science and engineering. Soon, the club had 20 members, all working on different projects based on Jake's suggestions. His future self was pleased with his progress. "You're doing great," he said during one of their daily conversations, "but we need to think bigger. The government needs to know about these technologies too." "How do I contact the government?" "You don't contact them directly. You get your ideas published in scientific journals. You win science competitions. You make yourself known to the right people." Jake entered a national science competition with a project based on his future self's teachings. His project was about creating super-strong materials using advanced chemical processes. The judges were amazed by his work, and he won first place. The victory got him attention from several government agencies and private companies. Representatives from NASA, the Department of Defense, and several major corporations contacted him about his research. "This is exactly what we need," his future self said. "Now you have access to the resources and people who can actually build these technologies." Jake met with scientists and engineers from around the country. He shared his ideas carefully, always making sure to present them as his own theories rather than knowledge from the future. People began to see him as a young genius who might hold the key to major technological breakthroughs. "There's one more thing we need to work on," his future self said. "The human element. Technology alone won't win this war. We need people who are prepared mentally and physically for what's coming." Jake began organizing fitness and survival training sessions for his friends and classmates. He taught them basic self-defense and problem-solving skills. He got them interested in camping and outdoor activities that would help them stay calm under pressure. "Why are you so interested in all this survival stuff?" Pete asked one day after a particularly intense training session. "You never know what might happen," Jake said. "Natural disasters, emergencies, stuff like that. It's good to be prepared." Jake also began studying military history and strategy. His future self taught him about the aliens' tactics and how humans had learned to counter them. Jake started thinking about how to apply these lessons to training programs for ordinary people. "The aliens expect us to panic and give up," his future self explained. "But if we can teach people to stay calm and think clearly under pressure, we'll have a huge advantage." As the months passed, Jake's influence continued to grow. The technologies he had suggested were being developed by companies and research institutions across the country. The people he had trained were becoming leaders in their own communities, spreading his ideas to others. Jake knew that he was changing the timeline. In his future self's original timeline, humanity had been caught completely off guard by the alien invasion. But now, 3 years before the aliens arrived, humanity was already beginning to prepare. They didn't know what they were preparing for, but they were developing the tools and skills they would need to survive. 2 years had passed since Jake first discovered the console. He was now 17 years old and had become famous throughout the scientific community as a young genius. Universities were offering him scholarships and companies wanted to hire him. But Jake knew his real work was just beginning. The technologies he had suggested were now being developed in laboratories around the world. New materials that were stronger than steel but lighter than plastic were being tested by aircraft manufacturers. Energy systems that could power entire cities with very little fuel were being built by major corporations. Communication networks that used quantum signals were being installed by government agencies. Jake sat in the abandoned facility, talking to his future self through the console. The conversations had become more urgent as the invasion date approached. "How are we doing?" Jake asked. "Better than in my original timeline," his future self replied. "The technologies you've helped develop are exactly what we need, but there's still one major problem." "What's that?" "People don't know how to use these technologies for war. They think they're building tools for peace and progress. They have No idea they're creating weapons that could save humanity. Jake thought about this problem. How do I convince them to think about military applications without telling them about the aliens? You need to get the military interested in your ideas. But not just the regular military. You need to reach the people who think about future threats and impossible scenarios. His future self explained that there were special groups within the government that planned for unusual situations. These groups thought about what would happen if the country faced completely new types of threats. There's a man named General Frank Stevens who runs a program called Future Defense Planning, his future self said. He's the kind of person who would listen to your ideas about preparing for unknown threats. Jake had learned how to get meetings with important people over the past 2 years. He contacted General Stevens' office and requested a meeting to discuss advanced defense technologies. A week later, he was sitting in a conference room at a military base, presenting his ideas to a group of high-ranking officers. Gentlemen, Jake said, standing in front of a large screen, I want to talk to you about a scenario that most people would consider impossible. What if we faced an enemy with technology far more advanced than our own? General Stevens leaned forward. What kind of enemy are you thinking about, son? Jake had practiced this presentation many times. I'm not talking about any specific threat. But throughout history, civilizations have been conquered by enemies with superior technology. The Spanish conquered the Aztecs partly because they had guns and horses. The Europeans colonized Africa partly because they had better weapons and ships. Go on, the general said. What if someday we faced an enemy that was as far ahead of us as we were ahead of the Aztecs? How would we defend ourselves? The room was quiet. Jake continued his presentation, showing them designs for adaptive weapon systems, modular spacecraft, and quantum communication networks. He explained how these technologies could be used to fight an enemy that had overwhelming technological advantages. The key, Jake said, is not to try to match their technology exactly. Instead, we need to be unpredictable. We need weapons and tactics that can change quickly. We need to be able to adapt faster than they can respond. General Stevens asked many questions about Jake's designs. Other officers took detailed notes. By the end of the meeting, Jake had convinced them to fund several research projects based on his ideas. This is excellent work, General Stevens said. We'll start developing prototypes immediately. But I have to ask, why are you so focused on this particular scenario? Jake had prepared for this question too, because it's the one scenario we're least prepared for. We have plans for fighting other countries, terrorists, and natural disasters. But we don't have plans for fighting an enemy that's completely superior to us technologically. Over the next few months, Jake worked closely with military researchers to develop new weapons and defense systems. The projects were classified, which meant that most people didn't know about them. But Jake's future self confirmed that they were exactly what humanity would need. Jake also continued working with civilian scientists and engineers. He helped them develop better materials, more efficient computers, and advanced manufacturing techniques. Many of these innovations had civilian applications, but Jake knew they would also be crucial for the war effort. One of Jake's most important projects was the quantum communication network. In his future self's timeline, the aliens had been able to jam all of Earth's radio and satellite communications during the first attack. This had made it impossible for human forces to coordinate their defenses. The quantum network is the key to everything, his future self explained. It can't be jammed or intercepted. As long as we have quantum communication, our forces can work together no matter what the aliens do. Jake worked with Dr. Rachel Wong, a brilliant physicist at the university, to develop the quantum communication system. Dr. Wong was amazed by Jake's understanding of quantum mechanics. You're describing concepts that are at least 10 years ahead of current research, she said. How do you come up with these ideas? I think about problems differently, Jake said. Instead of trying to improve existing technology, I imagine what we would need if we faced completely new challenges. The quantum communication project was successful. Within 6 months, they had built a prototype system that could send messages instantly across any distance without being detected or blocked. The military was so impressed that they ordered a full network to be built connecting all major defense facilities. Jake also worked on training programs for ordinary people. He convinced schools and community groups to include more physical fitness and problem-solving activities in their programs. He taught people how to think clearly under pressure and work together to solve difficult problems. "Why is all this training so important?" his friend Pete asked. They had just finished a particularly challenging obstacle course that Jake had designed. "Because you never know when you'll need these skills," Jake said. "Life can change suddenly. People who are physically and mentally prepared can handle anything." Jake's friend Lisa had become an excellent engineer thanks to his encouragement. She was now designing new types of spacecraft that could be quickly modified for different missions. "These ships are incredible," she said, showing Jake her latest designs. "They can be reconfigured in just a few hours. You could change them, from cargo haulers to fighters to research vessels." "That's exactly the kind of flexibility we need," Jake said. He knew that this adaptability would be crucial when fighting the aliens. In his future self's timeline, human ships had been too specialized. They couldn't change their roles quickly enough to respond to alien tactics. Jake was now 18 years old and had been accepted to multiple prestigious universities. But instead of going to college, he decided to work full-time on preparing for the invasion. He had convinced several major corporations and government agencies to hire him as a consultant. His official job was to develop advanced technologies for civilian and military use. His real job was to make sure humanity was ready for the greatest challenge in its history. "We're making incredible progress," his future self said during one of their conversations. "The technologies you've helped develop are far ahead of what we had in my timeline. But there's something else we need to work on." "What's that?" "Leadership. When the aliens arrive, humanity will need leaders who can make quick decisions and inspire people to keep fighting. We need people who understand both the technology and the human spirit." Jake realized that he was being prepared to be one of those leaders. All of his experiences over the past 3 years had been teaching him not just about technology, but about people. He had learned how to convince scientists to pursue new research, how to get military officers to adopt new strategies, and how to inspire ordinary people to push themselves beyond what they thought was possible. "The invasion is only 10 months away," his future self said. "It's time to start bringing everything together. We need to create a unified defense plan that uses all of our new technologies and trained personnel." Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. In 10 months, everything he had worked for would be put to the test. Humanity's survival would depend on whether they had prepared well enough for an enemy unlike anything they had ever faced. But Jake was no longer the curious 15-year-old who had stumbled upon an abandoned console. He was now a leader, an innovator, and humanity's secret weapon in the coming war. The question was whether 3 years of preparation would be enough to save his species. March 15th arrived exactly as Jake's future self had predicted. Jake, now 18 years old, stood in the newly built Earth Defense Command Center, watching the large screens that showed skies around the world. At exactly 12 o'clock noon, massive alien ships began appearing over every major city on Earth. The ships were enormous, some of them over 5 miles long. They blocked out the sun in many places, casting dark shadows over the cities below. But unlike in the original timeline, humanity was ready. "All units, this is command," Jake spoke into his headset. He had been appointed as strategic coordinator for the Earth Defense Corps despite his young age. His 3 years of preparation had earned him the respect of military leaders around the world. Execute Operation Rising Sun. Across the globe, human forces that had been secretly preparing for this moment sprang into action. The quantum communication network that Jake had helped develop allowed instant coordination between all defense forces. No matter how far apart they were, General Stevens stood next to Jake in the command center. "I have to admit, son, when you First told us about preparing for technologically superior enemies, I thought you were being paranoid. I'm glad you were right. The alien ships began broadcasting messages in dozens of Earth languages. The message was simple: surrender immediately, resistance is futile. Join the hegemony peacefully or face destruction. Jake activated the console. He had secretly installed in the command center. It was connected to the same temporal communication system he had discovered 3 years ago. Future me, are you there? I'm here, came the reply. And I have to say, this is very different from my timeline. The aliens looked confused. They expected us to panic and surrender, but our forces are moving into position exactly as planned. On the screens, Jake could see human spacecraft launching from hidden bases around the world. These weren't the primitive rockets that existed in the original timeline. They were advanced ships built using the technologies Jake had helped develop. The ships could reconfigure themselves during battle, changing from fighters to bombers to support vessels as needed. The alien ships began powering up their weapons, preparing to attack the cities below. But the humans struck first. Fire quantum torpedoes, Jake ordered. The human ships launched weapons that used the same quantum technology as their communication system. The alien shields, which had protected them against every weapon they had ever encountered, flickered and failed. The aliens had never seen weapons that attacked on a quantum level. Direct hits on multiple alien vessels, reported Commander Lisa Chun, Jake's childhood friend who now commanded the Pacific Fleet. Their shields are down. Switching to conventional weapons. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The aliens, who had conquered hundreds of worlds using the same basic tactics, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow any predictable pattern. Human ships that appeared to be damaged would suddenly split apart, revealing that they were actually multiple smaller vessels working together. When the aliens tried to jam human communications, they discovered that the quantum network was completely immune to their interference. When they attempted to use their superior numbers to overwhelm human positions, they found that human forces could coordinate with impossible precision. They're adapting faster than we calculated, reported one of the alien commanders, according to intercepted communications. This species does not behave like the others we have conquered. Jake watched the battle unfold on screens around the command center. In space above Earth, human and alien ships engaged in fierce combat. But the humans had advantages the aliens had never encountered before. Jake, his future self said through the console, they're about to try their standard intimidation tactic. They'll destroy one city to show their power and force the others to surrender. Not this time, Jake replied. He opened the channel to all human forces. All units, prepare for defensive formation Omega. Protect the cities at all costs. The alien fleet moved toward New York City, preparing to demonstrate their power. But as they approached, they found themselves flying into a trap. Hidden defense platforms that had been disguised as ordinary buildings revealed themselves and opened fire. The alien ships were caught in a crossfire from weapons they hadn't detected. More importantly, the humans had learned from Jake's future self about alien psychology. Instead of showing fear, the people in the cities below came out onto the streets and rooftops. They weren't running or hiding. They were watching the battle and cheering for their defenders. This is impossible, transmitted one alien captain. The ground dwellers should be terrified. Why are they not fleeing? The aliens had never encountered a species where civilians supported their military so strongly. In every other world they had conquered, the population had quickly turned against their own defenders when faced with superior alien technology. But humans were different. Jake's friend Pete, now a sergeant in the Earth Defense Corps, led a ground-based anti-aircraft unit in Chicago. When alien fighters broke through the orbital defenses and attacked the city, Pete's unit was ready. Remember, "You're training," Pete shouted to his soldiers. "These aliens think we're just primitive creatures. Let's show them what humans can do." Pete's unit used weapons that combined traditional human engineering with alien technology that had been reverse-engineered from crash sites over the years. The weapons were powerful enough to damage alien fighters, but more importantly, they were unpredictable. The aliens couldn't anticipate how humans would use them. The battle continued for hours. The aliens who expected quick victory or surrender found themselves in a prolonged fight against an enemy that seemed to get stronger as the battle continued. Every time they adapted to human tactics, the humans changed their approach. "This is Commander Morrison to all human forces," Jake announced. "Execute Operation Checkmate." This was the plan Jake had been saving for the crucial moment. Human ships throughout the solar system suddenly appeared from behind asteroids, moons, and space stations where they had been hiding. The aliens found themselves surrounded, but the real surprise came when the human ships began working together in ways the aliens had never seen. Using the quantum communication network, every human vessel could coordinate perfectly with every other vessel. They moved like a single organism with thousands of parts. "Impossible," transmitted the alien fleet commander. "No species should be capable of this level of coordination." The alien fleet, which had seemed overwhelming just hours before, was now trapped and outnumbered, but Jake wasn't finished. "Attention alien fleet," Jake broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Earth Defense Command. You came here expecting to find a primitive species that would surrender quickly. Instead, you found humans. We don't surrender, we don't give up. And we don't accept defeat." Jake paused, then continued. "But we're not like you either. We don't conquer other species. We defend ourselves and help others who are threatened. I'm offering you a choice. Retreat now and leave our solar system, or continue fighting and face complete destruction." The alien fleet commander responded immediately. "You cannot defeat the hegemony. We have resources from hundreds of worlds. This is only a small portion of our forces." "Then you should tell the rest of the hegemony what happened here today," Jake replied. "Tell them that humans are not like the other species you've conquered. We're something new. Something you've never faced before." The quantum communication console crackled, and Jake's future self sent a message. "Jake, they're going to retreat. In my timeline, this battle lasted for weeks and destroyed half the planet. But in this timeline, you've won in a single day." On the screens, Jake watched as the alien ships began withdrawing from Earth's atmosphere. They were retreating, something the hegemony had never done before in their thousands of years of conquest. "General." Stevens put his hand on Jake's shoulder. "Son, you've just saved our species. How did you know all this would work?" Jake looked at the console, where his future self had sent one final message. "Because humans don't just fight to win. We fight to protect what we love, and that makes us impossible to defeat." "I had help," Jake said simply, "from someone who understood what humans are really capable of." As the alien ships disappeared into space, Jake knew that this was just the beginning. Word would spread throughout the galaxy that there was a species that could not be conquered. Some alien civilizations would see this as a threat, but others would see it as hope. Humanity had become something new in the galaxy. Not just another conquered species, but the first civilization to successfully resist the hegemony. And Jake Morrison, the boy who had stumbled upon an abandoned console, had become the man who helped his species take its first steps toward becoming a galactic power, the temporal communication device powered down for the last time. Jake no longer needed advice from his future self. Humanity's future was now in good hands.